Hello everybody. Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Nick, and in today's video I'm going to talk about somewhat of it's not really a controversial topic, but it's a very opinionated topic, and that is what's breeder quality versus pet only quality. So I'm going to dive into some of that. I'm going to show you some of my holdbacks, just that, and I'll tell you why I deem them to be breeder quality. I'll kind of talk about some of the animals that I sell and if I think that I sell breeder or pet only animals. But the first thing into this video I want to explain is that a lot of this isn't. So everybody talks about how great my geckos are at handling, and this one is the absolute exception. But it's stunning, so I'm gonna handle it. So I will state though that everything I'm about to say is like 100% my opinion. There's gonna be people who disagree, there's gonna be people who agree, it's whatever. It's just my opinion. And some of this too just kind of comes into what I think is pet only versus breeder quality, and then why I think it does matter kind of who you are and what your goals are can kind of answer that question a lot. So I think the first thing that we should talk about when looking at is it pet only or is it breeder quality is the kind of easiest thing is the eye test, or the, looking at it and determining if it has good structure. So when we talk about structure, a lot of the things that people talk about is like the head width. And I've talked about this before, guys. I don't think width necessarily matters as much as there are certain head types, because the head types are different. So you have like the big quarter-sized heads, or bigger than quarter-sized heads that are just ginormous. So some people chase that. Some people really, really like big heads. Not everybody does. Personally, I don't chase big heads. I think it's kind of silly to an extent, because to think that that line's just stronger because it has a big head is kind of stupid, because it's not, it's a birth deformity, essentially, so are all morphs, or not deformity, I don't know what word I'm thinking of, but it's different. It's a variation on the wild type when it has those big heads. It was a selectively bred trait that's been passed on. So to say that those are stronger is kind of silly. To me, it's like saying, oh yeah, lily whites are stronger than Harlequins. Why? Doesn't make any sense at all. So part of that, is determining is the structure good. So like I said, we look at heads. For me, if it's like a really narrow head that doesn't widen like this way, like on the crest, like this gecko's head isn't anything too special. I think it'll grow into it. So you can kind of see that with this one's head, you're seeing that it does widen out as it kind of goes from the nose, and it does have very nice crests, and it has a very good head. Sometimes with the crests, you'll hear people say that they're bald. That would mean that these crests here, right here, those along the edge there, or along the edge of the head, are just non-existent. The other thing that you'd kind of look for too, I guess, is just kind of body build. Do they have a bulkier body? Are they super skinny and slender? Or what are they? Now, a lot of this has to do with the growing factors and the growing phases and things like that. So, I mean, I like them like this, it's like a little, but that's just because these guys are fed well and they're fed a proper diet, so they have a good like build to them. But structure is one of those things where as soon as you see a gecko I don't think it takes a scientist to be like, oh, that gecko has good structure. I don't think it takes all these things. I think your eye test is gonna jump out at you immediately, because some geckos you look at and you're like, yikes, like what happened there? Don't know where you went wrong, or I don't know who did what to you to make you look like that, but they did, and that sucks because you should not be bred. So when determining breeder versus pet only, structure does come into play. I've made videos on it before, guys. I'm not a huge, like I just said with the heads and stuff, I don't buy into any of that. I think as long as their head isn't super narrow and skinny, then it's a healthy gecko, and then the head looks good. And I do look at the crest. If it's a bald gecko, I would not breed it. I will not breed it. I think that is somewhat of a like a morph or a trait or something that should just kind of not be passed down because it's undesirable to look at. So in determining if you're buying a pet only gecko or a breeder quality gecko, you need to decide also kind of too, like, why you're in the hobby. If you're in the hobby to breed and you want to do this and you want to breed crested geckos and you want to sell them and you want to vend shows and you want to post everything on Morph Market, then great. You know, go get 2 high quality geckos or 3 high quality geckos and start breeding and start building your project within there. Don't just go buy, you know, a big thing too that comes into is a breeder quality versus pet only for a lot of people is lineage. I know that since I started selling more higher end geckos from a sense of like this gecko here, I sold its sibling who was a full quad stripe. Once you start, you know, getting, even if it's only a couple $100 gecko, you know, which is honestly still, right now it seems like that's a higher end gecko is for $200-300 bucks, is get you a really nice gecko. Lineage from people who have bought geckos like that from me has been very important to them. They want to know who are the parents, and they want to know that because they keep record of that, and it gives you somewhat of an insight as to what the gecko could potentially look like one day. So if you buy a pet only gecko, you know, typically you're not going to have lineage on it. And typically too, if you're buying a gecko and you don't really care, then you're probably not going to ask for lineage, and that's okay. You know, determine your market and what you want to go for. A lot of times breeder quality, in my opinion, you know it when you see it, but also too, it depends on the project. I think way too often we will look at somebody's gecko and be like, you should not breed that thing. If you have a female who, let's say she's lacking in some structure where maybe she doesn't look that good, you know, it's like, but let's say she's a patternless, and you got a patternless male who's absolutely fire, looks fantastic, great head, great structure, great body, you know, mass to him and all this other stuff, then at that point, I probably personally would pair that gecko to try to get the babies. And then the babies are going to be a good genetic mix, so hopefully they come out a little stronger, a little bigger, and things like that. And that's the other thing too, when it comes to pet only versus breeder quality, if you're a gecko, and this drives me absolutely crazy, when someone's female gecko tops out at like 35 grams and they're like, oh, should I breed it? No, you should not. There's probably something wrong with that gecko that's not letting it get to that size. It could be genetic, it could be environmental, it could be a lot of things, but something is causing it to not grow. It could have been stunted as a baby, for all you know. So if your gecko's topping out at that, don't breed it. It's not a smart thing to do because it's hard on their bodies, and it's just not. Small geckos at this point aren't seeming to be as desirable. And I also don't know, with how we do this in the hobby, I think that it's better to have some of these females who get up to that 45-50 gram mark before you start breeding them. Because I think we're finding, like, if you read online, like, I think online it says like 35 to 40 grams for a female or something like that. I mean, I know people who've had their females hit that in 1 year. That's crazy. I would not breed that gecko. Even if it hit it 1 year, I would not breed that gecko that year because they need some time to still internally mature and grow. So I think if you have a 2-year-old gecko that's 50 grams, that's awesome, and I think that those are good genetics. I'm not saying that massive geckos, because once again, now we're getting back to head size. That's just a line of gecko that is bigger, but I do think that there is something more desirable about a gecko that hits 45 to 50 grams instead of 35 to 40 grams, if that makes sense. And a lot of that too depends on how you feed, what you feed, how often you feed, and how good of an eater your gecko is. But I still think that some of that boils down to genetics as well. So when it comes to morphs, and honestly, a big thing is can any gecko be a breeder? The answer is no, in my opinion. I think we have way too many geckos being produced that are not high quality enough. Now that's just my opinion. I do think that there's a lot of people out there who are trying to, you know, do better, and we're keeping them in captivity. And I do understand the argument of like making sure that we don't get these genes like too diluted to where there's only really like a couple starting sources for our geckos. We need to make sure that there's still a big pool of genes to pick from so that all these animals are as healthy as possible. But I'm not quite certain if breeding unhealthy looking geckos, pet quality geckos, I don't think doing that makes sense. Now, here's the thing too, you know, this will be our third, you know, this next year will be our third season breeding. What I consider pet quality now was not what I was considering pet quality when I first started. There are geckos that when I first started who helped get me to this point, who I today would not breed and they would be out of my project. I mean, we recently just sold a lot of geckos who I'm not saying are pet quality because I believe all of them are to be breeder quality because they were in all of our projects. We just have better geckos now. So I think that part of this is like, I think your view on pet only versus breeder quality will change as time moves on. And I think the viewpoint on that, you know, I'm sure in 5 years, hopefully I look back at some of the geckos I bred and I realize that they were a good stepping stone to get to where I am 5 years from now. And that's the way I look at a lot of those geckos who I started with, who, like I said, honestly, if I would have posted all my females on a Facebook group, I bet I would have been blasted. I would have been blasted for breeding some of them because some people say, oh, you shouldn't breed that. That's nowhere near high quality enough. Well, that it also boils down to opinion. And the big thing with any gecko, guys, and I think that this is what makes it more important as if it's a breeder quality or not, is how are you going to find that gecko a forever home or a good home or a home in general to take care of it. Because it's a very saturated market. There's a lot of people doing this. So how are you going to make sure that your geckos find a good home? Typically, the best way to do that is to breed higher end geckos and stay in that market. There is something to be said for the pet only market. I just think that if you only have a bunch of pet only geckos breeding, that's what they're going to be producing. And it's kind of like, it can be dicey as to figuring out where to place these geckos, because at the end of the day, you know, your female is going to lay 12 to 16 eggs a year, maybe more, some females do, and it's on you to take care of all those babies, and it's on you to find them homes. And I mean, you can sit here and you can be like, oh, well, I'll take care of them forever, and like, no, you won't. You absolutely will not. I promise you that will not happen. You do not want to have your whole collection of crested geckos. If you want to breed, be from one female. That makes zero sense. So that's kind of part of it. I really think a lot of it's opinion. And honestly, guys, I think a lot of it's trusting your gut instinct and understanding, like, if someone's selling this female gecko for 50 bucks, odds are it is absolutely not going to be a breeder female and a breeder quality female. Sometimes those come across on Craigslist and things like that. I mean, I'm not naive, you know, that can happen, but for the most part, that's not gonna happen. So understand what you invest in this is kind of what you're gonna get back out of it. So breeder versus pet only, it's really in the eyes of the beholder. You know it when you see it, and if not, it'll take you a year or two, but trust me, you'll figure it out. So that's just kind of my opinions on it. I can get out some more of our holdbacks who I deem breeder quality. One of our brindle super dowels. Really nice gecko here. Again, to me, it's going to be breeder quality just because it is a super dow. Has good head structure going for it, and just a good little, you know, it's gaining size. It's got a thick little body there. It's a good looking gecko. Here's another super dow. Not totally certain what this one is. Oh no, is it turning male? Oh, that'd break my heart. But you can see really nice orange colors on it. Love all the colors. And just ink blotty. Just really nice. Just this gecko, you look at it, you know that you can breed it one day. I mean, just really solid gecko. This is another one. Super dow. High quality. You can just tell right off the bat. I mean, really good looking gecko. Here's one that we actually sold. Here's one that I'm actually currently holding back to breed, most likely. And then here's one that we sold, which these two are actually siblings. I think I held back the wrong one, guys, not gonna lie. But this one here is obviously breeder quality. These are both really good looking geckos. I mean, look at that. So you can tell. You can really just tell who's a breeder and who's not. Alright guys, that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you did enjoy it. Comment down below your opinions on breeder versus pets. I know I didn't really cover like a whole lot, but I hope I got my opinion across on the whole deal. So hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Until next time guys, stay safe and stay positive.